to the Sustainability in Behind Bars live stream with Kelsey Ramage. Thank you for your time. My name is Mike Norbury. I will be hosting none other than Kelsey. To start, I'm just going to give you a little insight on what this is all about. I'm doing the Patron Perfectionist cocktail competition. I made top 30 in Canada. And the ethos behind my drink, Warrior Bird, is to leave it better than you found it. I thought a series of mental health talks and sustainability talks are super important moving forward after the tough 2 years of COVID, to replenish our sacred industry. And Kelsey fit the bill perfectly with her work with the Trash Collective and all of her knowledge on sustainability. So without further ado, here is Kelsey Ramage. Kelsey, thanks for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I'm kind of struggling to find words here. I'm excited. What was your journey in what led you to the Trash Collective? How did you kind of get your start? What kind of motivated you or drove you into the direction you ended up in today?
That's a great question. So I was kind of living and working in Vancouver. I guess after having worked in bars for quite some time. I think at that point it might have been like 10 years. And I'd kind of gotten to a point in my career where I was working at the Oakwood Canadian Bistro, and we were doing a lot of seasonality with drinks, and I was working very closely with the chefs there, but I was finding myself uninspired by and unable to find mentorship in the industry. So what I did was decided to move to, one of the bigger markets where there were a lot of awards being won, and they were finding a lot of success within the industry. And so I got work visa for the UK, which I was privileged enough to be able to pick up my life without having dependents or and had the financial stability to do so. And I found work at Dandelion, again, very lucky, because they happened. I don't think that they were hiring at the moment because it took them a long time to pick me up. Said yes in September, and then I didn't get hired till December. And I think that was just because Ian forgot. So I mean, that wasn't anything to do with sustainability. When that conversation started happening was kind of when we were doing some menu development for Dandelion, and I was kind of seeing that perhaps the practices that we are more used to in BC, where climate change and discussions around environmental sustainability were already being had. London was a little bit later to pick up, and I was kind of seeing working at a hotel how insanely bad it can be. So Ian and I realized that we work together really well on recipes, that creatively we had found a really good stride. So we kind of wanted to look at recipes in a way, through a lens that we were seeing chefs do, but we weren't really seeing bars do. And that was trying to reuse ingredients. And part of the entire MO at Dandelion was that if you can use it and it's already in-house, try not to buy a new thing. And I think that was just kind of Ryan and Ian just being smart about business and not wanting to buy a whole bunch of shit when you have 30 bartenders all working on one cocktail list, which is what happened there. So out of that, we did a pop-up. Both of us kind of liked, tropical drinks and the escapism that those type of bars offer. we did call it tiki at that time, which we've since pulled back on. It's just trash, or the Trash Collective, just due to cultural appropriation. We're sort of reconciling that and the damage that was done there. So we no longer call it trash tiki. But yeah, so we started doing pop-ups. So we started like making drinks out of other bars, like stuff that they were throwing away. And another big reason for that was because we were both working in London, where you make no money and living costs are very high. So we begged, borrowed, and stealed for the first 6 months, and then it just kind of exploded. And we got asked to do a pop-up with Dan Barber, and then we kind of all of a sudden this whole global tour started getting pulled together, and it became a beast bigger than us. But yeah, all of those things, once we started talking about sustainability within cocktails and recipes, it overtook other parts of our lives where, you start thinking about the clothes you're wearing and, where you're getting things delivered to you. And during the pandemic, it was obviously very difficult for everybody, but like trying to move away from things like Amazon and supporting, local businesses instead. So all of those things are starting to feed back through where, the topic of sustainability is much more than just about recipes. It's about, it becomes a part of a lifestyle, I suppose. If that was a brief synopsis of where I've come from.
No, that's amazing. I've obviously looked up everything I could find on the internet about your journey, but I didn't realize it kind of just stemmed from taking other bars' ingredients and rolling with it. That's pretty, so essentially that just came from the thought process of how 30 bartenders were working on one menu, so don't buy extra stuff. And then that kind of just like light bulb above your head, like, oh, let's take stuff from other bars that they're not using. That's kind of the process there.
Yeah, it wasn't, and like initially it was just the waste that that Dandelion was producing. So like if Ian and I were like, for our first pop-up, where are we gonna find waste? Well, it's gonna be the bar that we're both working in that serves 200 people a night. Like that's where you start. So we were seeing that like even I think the biggest thing was juicing, was just that like London gets their limes from Chile or, somewhere very far away, similar to where that we do here. Actually, we have limes that are grown closer in Canada, but it was that. And then we're getting them and they're like of medium quality. They like don't yield very much juice, but we're only using them for juice. So like there was a bit of a disconnect for our mind as to, the greater problem within the cocktail industry, in that we're all using the same strain of limes, and we're using them for like such a little part of what they can truly be used for.
So I think what would be interesting is to take this into beginning, middle, and end. So I guess that was your beginning. So for everyone watching, imagine their bars just open and they have no sustainability practices in place. What would you recommend as a startup point? Like, what is something that they can do immediately with, say the basics, to be more sustainable and more environmentally friendly?
Yeah, I'll say a couple of different things, because I think that every bar situation is unique, and I think that there's a lot of hesitation to get started because people think that it needs to be an entire overhaul, and that's just not the case. Like it can just be like doing one or two things, and then you kind of grow from there. Also, I just wanted to mention, if people have questions, just fire them on into the chat, and we'll try to answer as we go. If we don't, then we'll do it at the end. Is that right? Am I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that what you want to do? Okay, cool. I just saw that Ryan had his hand up, so just fire that right straight into the chat. So in terms of like, if you're starting out, the thing that I always kind of recommend as like the starting point is looking at what actually gets thrown out in your garbage bin. So if you're already separating your recycling from your compost, this sounds 101, but like nobody does it. So I'm just going to say it. If you're already separating your compost from your recycling from your garbage, which I think a lot of Canadian cities do, take a look at what's going into the garbage and also what's going into the recycling. Because I don't think a lot of people have trained themselves or their bartenders, as if you're a manager or whatever, wherever your position might be, as to what actually can be recycled in each area. Because a lot of people throw things into the recycling that can't be recycled by whatever pickup service that you use. A good example of that is like coffee cups, or like used food containers that haven't been cleaned, pizza boxes, that kind of shit can't be recycled because it contains grease and then it contaminates the entire thing. And then you're creating a bigger problem by putting it in there than separating it properly. So that's the first thing. That's like a really easy thing. All you have to do is be like, hey, recycling partner, what can I recycle? And then you can get this little shiny piece of paper and you put it up above the recycling bin and do a little training with your staff. Easy. Second thing is I'll look in the garbage bin, and this sounds like, you're going garbage hunting, but whatever. The garbage bin usually contains stuff that you might be able to control. For example, like sometimes, plastics recycling is a whole nother ball game, and a lot of our recycling that is plastic just gets shipped off to somewhere overseas that then, releases it into the environment because it's less controlled. And also China stopped buying our plastic waste. So try to not buy things that are in plastic recycled containers. I know that cleaning products are probably the number one, but have a look in that garbage bin and just see kind of what the biggest thing is that's being thrown out. Is it containers? Is it like your staff's coffee cups? Is it, like what's in there, and see if you can stop buying that thing or switch it to another supplier that perhaps does it, delivers it in a different way, in a more sustainable way. And then the last kind of big thing, and these are all things that I think the onus is on the big companies, and by using our purchasing power to switch the onus from us as like little guy bars to the companies that are actually delivering their products in these containers. So the where was I going with that? The products. Sorry, I get on tangents. The last thing would be your produce. So have a look at where you're getting that and how it's being delivered. And if you can, I know citrus is like a major one that's like super impossible, but those waxed boxes are often not recyclable either. If there is some other method, if you send your own vessel to and from, if they're a smaller company, or if you need to see if you can have those discussions to see where you can get your fruit locally. I know citrus is a major problem, but like anything other than citrus, in terms of fresh produce, can you find it locally? Can you ferment it? Can you make it shelf stable? And that's like a whole nother whack of ball game. And that's kind of like opening the third door where it gets into a much bigger conversation.
So simple.
It's so not, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is that like, you can start making smaller steps, things like, reusable cocktail napkins, or like, shifting your cocktail program away from using straws. Those are kind of like the 101 basics. But when you start like building, there are going to be major steps that you might want to look at taking in terms of like supplier issues.
Yeah, I guess, COVID hasn't been good for that with all the takeout containers, and nothing is reusable. I have to like put it through, some sort of like laser treatment to get all the germs off before I can use that again. So yeah, I know COVID was hard for everyone. Even I
started buying things in plastic again, because even like, you'd go to your bulk section and they're already pre-bagged for you so that there's less physical contact with it. So there's just, it became very difficult.
Yeah. Well, let's get to, the middle part. So after you blew up and these pop-ups and these, reusing other bars' waste became bigger than yourselves, like, what was the next thing? Did you stay at Dandelion? Did you get other job opportunities? What was the next step in your sustainability trash collective journey?
Yeah, so we did like 1 or 2 pop-ups in and around London, and then all of a sudden we got a contract to do Wasted with Dan Barber, and that's kind of where it really blew up, because we were getting a lot of, obviously, media coverage because of Dan, but also because of what we were doing. So we got a couple of like, pop-up requests, and we both had to leave Dandelion because of this pop-up that was a month long, or maybe it was 6 weeks in the end. So we started getting these requests, and then, we kind of filled in some of the gaps in between the countries that we wanted to go to and travel to. And, as bartenders, we're very lucky to be able to be like, hey, bar I've never met before, how do you feel about hosting me for a pop-up? And we have the luxury of doing that, which is amazing. And hopefully we get to start doing that again, once it's safe to travel. And yeah, we just kind of ended up putting together a tour where we were able to go into like, 20 different countries to do pop-ups, and we ended up teaching bartenders about what we were doing and why and how, and then they could come into the pop-up later on and taste the recipes, which it just ended up being a very good business model at that time. And so when we landed back in Toronto, which is where we decided we wanted to live, or I decided I wanted to live, it became like very much so that I wanted to start, scaling back the traveling, A, because it's physically difficult, and B, because it's not so sustainable. So I've started, trying to create more content for Pernod Ricard, so that they've got their market with their people in every single different country, so that I can create the content, and then I don't have to travel, and their market representatives there can teach the content that we've created with the sustainability department. So it's kind of really helped me ease off the travel. I mean, obviously in the last year, but also going forward. So that's where I'm at with that. And then I also opened and closed and am reopening Supernova, which is, Supernova was like, kind of took all of the things that I was preaching over the course of the tour and made me put it into practice, into like a bricks and mortar bar with staff, and to see how everything actually translated as a business owner, which there was some learnings for sure, but I'm very much looking forward to trying that again and giving it another go, after having lost our space during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that happened to you.
It's okay. It was a huge space, and I'm really looking forward to something smaller.
Well, I guess, the middle for a bartender plan, what can bartenders do directly on their cocktail menus? So specific to, like you guys had 30 people look at one list. Unfortunately, here in Victoria, I don't know if we have the the opportunity to do that, but what are some things that local bartenders in BC or anywhere, anyone who's watching, what can they do directly on their menu to still make a beautiful cocktail and have sustainability at the heart of it?
Well, I really think that it is important to reuse ingredients, important to make the most of everything that you're bringing in. And I know that I talk about that quite a lot, but I think that that there is something a little bit more important than that. And that's using what you have locally. And, what I found with Supernova, because I was tied to one place for, an amount of time where I wasn't, going to another country constantly and having to learn what the fruit was. I really got to sink some time. Yeah, there was some challenges there. But I really got to sink some time into learning about what the land in Ontario can yield and what it grows and what local farmers are growing outside of what you find in supermarkets, which I didn't specifically ask for stuff that wasn't being grown in supermarkets. It's just that when you're creating a cocktail list in December in Ontario, you got to get creative. And what I was finding that there was all of these indigenous foraged, seaweeds and mushrooms and herbs that they were drying in the fall and that I had access to because of a couple of different really neato companies here that supported that type of stuff. So it was I'd bring something in, you test it and you trial it. And sometimes it's a little bit more expensive, but usually it's because it's a lot more flavorful and it's got this really wonderful backstory that you can weave through the cocktail that just all of a sudden I became way more re-inspired about what was happening, locally. And I think that that's such a cool thing that Canadian bars can do to really champion the stuff that's being grown here.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's cool.
We have a local forager here who sells to a lot of the higher end restaurants, and just the nicest, craziest guy, just knows where everything is, and goes all over the forests and all over the land here on the island. And I think it would be cool if a lot of cocktail bars, more cocktail bars, could get in touch with him and just start using these local ingredients.
Yeah, it's being able to make friends with chefs sometimes to get those those contacts that they hold tiki recipes of the past. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, but once those, once that promotion of sharing those people starts happening in our cocktail industry, that's when creative collaboration can really start happening, which is really cool.
Right. So I guess where is Kelsey Ramage going now? Now that COVID's opening up, where are you going with your sustainability journey? What are you up to now?
You know what? This past year has really highlighted some issues for the cocktail industry for me. And to be honest, I've kind of started, not entirely moving away from sustainability. I think it's really super important. But because I wasn't, I was creating some bottled drinks, and that's kind of obviously slowed down because everything is opening back up. I think talking more about the human sustainability aspect is where I'm pointing things, because I think there's a real problem within our industry in regards to diversity and equity. So while I'm not yet directly qualified to start speaking about that, I am just taking this time to research and to learn. I'm taking a couple of, a whole bunch of actually courses on how to change my business model and how to rewrite, how Supernova is sort of centered. Because I think we need to make some major changes in our industry in that regard. And when Supernova looks to reopening, I want to be part of that conversation, and I want to be part of changing it. So right now, learning, listening, changing behaviors, that's where I'm at.
That's amazing. Where do you think the future of sustainable bartending, past obviously what you said of learning, listening, and doing our due diligence and growing as people and really trying to be more inclusive and diverse, where do you think this future of sustainable bartending is going?
I think it still has relevance. I think that we've still got a long way to go, so long as the government is regulating the glass bottles that we get our liquor delivered into, delivered in rather. And then also our, this is very specific, but our cleaning products, it is impossible to find biodegradable cleaning products in our industry, and specifically ones that are delivered in refillable containers. So I think there's some work to be done there, which I'm starting to delve into a little bit. Specifically on a bartender level, I think it's just learning about, learning about what grows in your area, and also how to create things that are more shelf stable so that we're not constantly reaching for the same ingredients, when it comes winter, how we need to, create macerations when there is a season, and use those macerations as we go into fall. Like, I had a lot of success with those at Supernova, and being able to have this little plum liqueur that was sitting on the back bar or in the fridge for 6 months out of the year that we had enough to keep us going. I think that's kind of, it's not terribly important, but I think it's just an important skill for bartenders to start learning and to start using on the regular.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, this was a huge deal for me. Thank you so much for coming in and kind of showing your path and all your accomplishments and everything you've done. Yeah, I guess we'll take the last 4 minutes here and see if anyone has questions. And if there's a bit of radio silence, maybe I'll just start asking you questions, that I'm curious about in other aspects. But if anyone has any questions for Kelsey, please throw them down now.
Yeah, if there's no questions that pop up, I would like to know what's in your drink, Mike.
Oh, I guess you know what, I could do that part of the interview where I ask people for 3 months, try my product free and just put your credit card comments in the section below. I'm just kidding. So the drink and the concept, this couldn't have been a more perfect interview, because when I was creating this concept, I just thought of specifics. So, the title is Perfectionist. What does it mean to be a perfectionist? And I thought, well, I think it's more than a drink. I wanted to leave it better than I found it. That's kind of the tagline. And in regards to our industry. So I was actually looking at what pollinates agave, and I stumbled upon a hummingbird. So, in line with the bird cocktails, like a jungle bird, I decided to call it warrior bird, because hummingbirds are just these majestic little creatures that are a lot more actually fierce than you would think on a smaller level. But they're pollinators. They exist here in BC. They're all the way down the west coast. They're prevalent in Mexico. They pollinate the agave plant. But what they do that's really important is they leave it better than they found it. They leave their environments thriving and pollinated for other animals to survive, as well as other hummingbirds to continue the good work that they do. So I wanted to try and find the same sort of method within the hospitality industry and really make it better than, leave it better than we found it. So, mental health, sustainability. You had mentioned human sustainability and diverse practices, but this year was a little different with the virtual voting. So it's a more simplistic concept, but it's 50 milliliters of Patron Silver, 10 milliliters of Midori Japanese melon liqueur, 22 milliliters of fresh lime juice, 15 milliliters of a local honey syrup, and 2 dashes of St. George absinthe.
Nice.
Served on a big rock with a cucumber rose garnish and some black pepper, because I feel like cucumber and melon kind of in the same family, and the black pepper brings you back to the notes of the Patron. And I feel like it's kind of like a margarita riff fit for a pollinator, or like a hummingbird, just kind of nectarous and fresh and reminds you of, a floral forest environment where things grow. But like I had mentioned, the whole concept at the beginning for the top 30 is to vote. So I'm going to put up a QR code on the screen from this lovely coaster that Caledonia and Bacardi made for me.
Nice.
And if anyone would please vote for the drink, I would greatly appreciate it. And maybe I'll ask you just quickly while I hold this up, have you done any cocktail competitions?
Myself, yes,
Yeah.
I have. I've done a few, one of which I think back in the day I lost to Sean Sewell. So when I was just starting out. Yeah, I did Altos Tohono Society in 2016. That's one of the ones that I won. I used to compete quite a bit. I've kind of fallen off of that a little bit, and I probably judge a few more than I've competed in. I don't know if I'm going to compete again, and I'll probably do maybe one or two when I reopen Supernova. Just, I find that cocktail competitions keep you relevant, and they keep you sharp, and they keep you within an understanding of what's happening in the industry and where competitions are going. So I think that they are really important for personal growth. So I might compete again, but I'm not sure which one and where.
Well, I hope whichever one that is that you decide to do, I'm not on the receiving end against you. And I guess, yeah, there's no questions. People are probably just nervous to ask you, and I'd like to take the time to thank you for your time.
No problem.
And yeah, like I said, this is a big deal. 4 years ago, I was in a really, really small town on Vancouver Island, and I just had watched that Hey Bartender documentary on Netflix and read Sean Sewell's book and was just in awe of this whole cocktail thing and wanted to do it so bad. And now I'm having a live stream conversation with you. So it means the world to me. And I'd really like to thank you again for your time.
No problem at all. It was an absolute pleasure, and good luck in the competition. I hope you do really well. Seems like you will anyway, I think.
Thanks so much.
No problem. Okay. We'll see you later. If there's no questions. Okay.